A parent speaks out for the first time after losing her child. Fox 45 News talks with 12-year-old Jalen Richards' mother and his aunt after his tragic death.
9 children killed in less than 4 months, taking a closer look at the young victims lost to violence in Baltimore this year.
Was it done to protect student privacy or cover up bad test scores? Project Baltimore continues its investigation on missing test data.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
I'm Jalen's mom, and this is very heartbroken.
The mother and aunt of 12-year-old killed Saturday night is sharing more about Jalen Richards and his struggle with the streets of Baltimore. Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Tonight we have team coverage on the youth violence crisis in Baltimore, starting with Mackenzie Frost. Mackenzie, what are these women saying about what happened?
Yeah, Mary and Kai, these two women are very emotional talking about what happened to Jalen Richards. They say that he was caught up and taken advantage of by older adults in Baltimore City. We do know that Richards was already on house arrest for previous crimes, but they say that adults in the city know that kids won't be facing the same harsh penalties as adults would be if they committed the same crimes. And they say that's why these kids are being targeted. Now, both the mom and the sister didn't want to show their face on camera because they're afraid of retribution. So you'll just hear what they have to say.
He was on house arrest due to the streets that somebody destroyed my nephew. The big people that don't want to take charges and say you're a 12-year-old that you will come home. They still was dragging my baby to the streets because he was a minor. And my son's life ran out, like I said, to the streets of Baltimore City. And he is in the arms of God now.
And Mackenzie, this is exactly what we heard from Jalen's grandmother yesterday and what that mom who pulled her son out of Baltimore City said earlier this week. Are city leaders saying anything about this problem of getting kids recruited?
Not really, and this really does seem to be a pattern that we're hearing from families time and time again. Yesterday, we sent questions to state lawmakers asking about the possibility of policy changes, but not one elected leader responded. Today, we sent questions to the mayor and police commissioner asking about potential gang problems in the city. We'll have what they have to say, plus more from this family, coming up at 5. We're live in the newsroom. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Young people have been hit especially hard by violence in Baltimore City this year. Their loved ones left behind grieving and wondering who they would have grown up to be. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live right now with more on this part of the story and how people are reflecting on these young lives being lost. Maxine?
Well, Kai, there is a lot of heartbreak in Baltimore City from families who have lost their children. Their stories and their cries for help are all hauntingly similar and not to be forgotten.
They say no parent should outlive their child. But in Baltimore City, it's the harsh reality for far too many families.
My grandson was killed like a dog in the street.
This year alone, 9 children under the age of 18 have been killed. Victims of violence, their lives were cut shockingly short. This is 17-year-old Deja Garrison, shot and killed on New Year's Day. 2 days later, 8-year-old elementary school student Dylan King was killed. His older brother accused of the crime.
Sad for the family. I feel for the family.
The following day, 16-year-old Deontay Dorsey was gunned down outside the Edmondson Village Shopping Center, where 4 other students were also hurt. His family vowing to keep his name alive.
We're very heartbroken, and we're trying to get through this the best way that we can.
15-year-old LaRon Henderson's family also left grieving after he was killed in an alley blocks from his high school.
We need to stop glorifying this, and we need to stop normalizing this. This is not normal. Not at one piece this is normal.
Another student, Andres Moreno Jr., just 16 years old, was also killed in January.
And you can tell that he wasn't breathing after that. He was walking home. He was a nice boy. He didn't bother nobody. He didn't say nothing to nobody. I don't understand what happened, really.
That's 4 young victims who will never graduate high school or go on to fulfill their dreams, all killed before the month's end. On March 6th, 16-year-old Isaiah Carter, a Patterson High JROTC student, was killed in a park near his high school. His mother left with the pain that will last a lifetime.
I had a son, and he is gone. My son was a statistic this time. I'm not going to be okay with this. Like, I'm not letting people forget his name.
On April 10th, 16-year-old Cameron Murphy was shot and killed near Mondawmin Avenue. And Saturday night, the latest young victim, 12-year-old Jalen Richards, was shot. Assault rifle casings were found on the ground after police say he was struck several times while running away.
I would never, ever be able to touch him again and tell him how much I love him. And it's heartbreaking.
That heartbreak is felt in homes across Baltimore City with empty beds where these children once slept.
Now, a 2-year-old little girl's death was also ruled a homicide this year due to fentanyl intoxication. Reporting live in Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Maxine. Youth violence has been a persistent concern in the city. Last year, a South Baltimore father came to Fox 45 News with a desperate plea. He told us his 14-year-old son was involved in a life of crime, and despite run-ins with the law, there was no accountability for him.
He started breaking into cars to steal cigarettes and change. Then you're stealing cars and running from the police. I got the call from Prince Frederick County and Calvert County telling me that they had him in custody, and they told me what that happened and stuff. And I said, you know what? Let him stay there until his court date. He needs to learn. Let him stay there. No, sir. You have 6 hours to get here to get him, or we will be coming to get you for neglect and abandonment issues.
Well, the father said his son has gone on carjacking sprees from Baltimore to D.C. Santiago told us he even tried to turn his son into police. The teen was only given a citation.
I want my son to get some help. I mean, if it's jail, that's what it's going to take, then jail. What I think my son needs, he needs some mental help. This isn't even about my son. This is about Baltimore City's kids. This is about all juvenile delinquents. He's not going to be alive.
Baltimore police are asking for the public's help in a homicide investigation. The department releasing this video caught the moment a suspect killed a man on camera. Happened Sunday on Chesley Avenue in Northeast Baltimore. You can see a hooded suspect wearing all black chase the victim behind a home, shooting him multiple times. There is an $8,000 reward for information leading to the arrest in this case. Anybody with information should contact Baltimore police. As of this morning, Baltimore police are reporting 83 homicides. That's compared to more than 100 at this time last year. There have also been 163 non-fatal shootings. There were 205 at this time in 2022. And that brings us to our question of the day. Do you think local politicians listen to their constituents? We just opened the poll. To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
There's new information in an ongoing Project Baltimore investigation. We told you earlier this week the Maryland Department of Education removed state test results from its website and hid the data from the public.
As Chris Papps explains, the move is drawing criticism.
MSDE tells Project Baltimore the changes to the 2022 state testing data were made to protect student privacy. The change was made after Project Baltimore in February reported that 23 Baltimore City schools had 0 students among those tested who scored proficient in math. To produce that story, we analyzed the original 2022 test results the state posted on its website in January. But those results were removed, and when the revised version was posted in March, it looked a lot different. MSDE made the changes, it says, because of learning challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. They are calling their actions enhanced de-identification. For Lucy Douglas, Dean of the Journalism School at the University of Maryland, it's a term that's ludicrous.
I'm sorry, enhanced de-identification. I'm just really struggling with this. Why would they have to de-identify anyone who's not identified? Yeah, I don't see anybody identified here. Don't see it.
Coming up at 5, we'll tell you how MSDE is not just making changes to data in 2022, they're changing the data going back years. We'll also tell you what those changes are. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
In Harford County, the county executive and school superintendent are debating the school budget. Today, a rebuttal to Harford County Executive Bob Castley's proposed budget after he outlined it on Fox 45 Morning News on Monday. That proposal comes with no tax increases and roughly $305 million for Harford County Public Schools. But that's $19 million less than the previous administration gave schools in their last budget year.
We've fully funded, more than fully funded the state, our educational budget over the last several years, and that's enabled our Board of Education to accumulate a fund balance of over $93 million.
Costs are increasing greatly, and but this county is failing to fund education at the level that it needs to.
Well, more on the back and forth and how the Harford County executive believes schools can cut costs and make this budget work, coming up in the next hour.
Another promised weekly recycling will return, but not for another year. The latest pushback from residents and city officials on DPW's failures with recycling.
A new police chief with a new vision for Baltimore County, his plans for a comprehensive approach to public safety.
I'm Scott Thuman in Washington, where there's another critical fight about abortion rights, and the political fallout could be significant. I'll explain.
And tracking some beautiful weather for this afternoon's commute. Temperatures in the 70s, still a bit of a high fire danger. We'll get into that. Plus, well, we could have high temperatures near 90. It's in my Weather Authority forecast.
Fox 45 News, winner of 17 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
The court faces a clear choice: uphold legal and scientific fact or capitulate to MAGA extremism.
The Supreme Court did not do away with abortion. They sent it back to the states where you and I and everybody in every state could vote on whether they wanted abortion or not. And that's the way it should be.
The Supreme Court temporarily extends access to a popular abortion drug until Friday. The drug in question is the most common method of abortion in the United States. Now, the order to put off restrictions comes as a legal challenge to the FDA approval continues. Justice Samuel Alito also indicated the court will make another decision on the case by Friday night. Sinclair's chief political correspondent Scott Thuman is taking a look at the political frenzy on Capitol Hill.
Another critical Supreme Court say on abortion in America, with political fallout playing out just across the street.
Republicans have one goal. One goal. They want to control women in every state and every zip code.
The Democrats used it against us, obviously, in the election. Well, we're doing away with abortion.
While in the 2022 midterm elections, Republicans won on the top issue of inflation, the red wave they were expecting never truly materialized, since some say conservative efforts to limit abortion rights also galvanized opponents. Politico reporting abortion hadn't simply awakened Democratic voters, it was actually persuading swing voters, citing internal memos calling it a massive vulnerability for Republicans.
Every time Republicans are talking about abortion, we're losing, right? Because we don't do it well as a party, right? I think the next generation of Republican that's not a top priority for them.
But that hardly means all Republicans are backing off.
I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. We're going to continue to champion the right to life. We're going to continue to champion the interests of women born and unborn.
In Florida, potential presidential candidate and governor Ron DeSantis further restricting when a woman can get an abortion from 15 weeks to now just 6 weeks. Within the party, worries that will only hurt the GOP in 2024. Former President Trump unusually quiet on that latest move, while President Biden tweeted the only way to counter it, elect a Congress who will pass a law restoring Roe v. Wade.
If any Republican thinks that voters have simmered down on the abortion issue, they are wrong. That is going to continue well into the next presidential race.
A fight already well underway. In Washington, Scott Thuman for the National Desk.
Take a look at this beautiful scene. The tulips in full bloom at Sherwood Gardens in Guilford. More than 60,000 bulbs ordered each year from Holland to maintain the look of the garden. The sun also a big factor and determines how early the flower blooms and how long they will last.
Jonathan, Mary's being humble. That's actually Mary's backyard.
Can you imagine that I work and do that too?
Over there. That's right before you came into work.
Oh, someday.
Well, here's a live look outside at Towson and also the Inner Harbor. We really did get to enjoy some beautiful weather today, but things are already heating up.
Thank goodness.
Yes, thank goodness.
It's a little cold this morning.
I turned on the heat last night, guys.
My God.
And I don't normally get that cold.
Turn the air on in 2 days.
You know,
crazy.
Those jokes about Baltimore are true. They're not an exaggeration.
It's true.
We got like those 2 days of spring, and then here we go, summertime, and people will be complaining how hot it is, right?
Absolutely.
Here we go. Temperatures could be as high as almost 90 degrees. Get a load of that by the time we get into the end of the week. 73 right now. What an absolutely gorgeous day. Again, still that higher than average fire danger with those winds. A little gusty from time to time, northwest at 9. The humidity is still a little abnormally low at only 19%, which makes it feel good. But unfortunately, again, with these azure blue skies and great outdoors weather, folks may say, hey, I want to clean up the yard, that kind of thing. They may say, oh, I want to do some outdoor burning and kind of burn some of these leaves and debris from the fall and the winter. Not a good idea today. The wind's still out of the west at about 10, gusting up to about 20. This could be the case tomorrow as well, as the humidity remains pretty low. It's only at 17% right now here in Baltimore. Could see some spotty areas are up to about 20 to 35%, but this is still low enough to make for rapid wildfire spread and kind of explosive wildfire development. So if you don't have to do the burning outside today, I wouldn't, and I'd probably wait tomorrow as well. Maybe as we head toward about Friday, things will start to get better, although it's going to get hot by then, and then rain comes for the weekend. So temperatures right now in the 60s and low to mid 70s. Just a gorgeous afternoon. Take a look at the HD radar. I'll step out here. You can see pretty much from shoreline all the way to mountaintop here on the East Coast. We've got some mainly clear skies. Really have to get way up here toward north of Detroit, up toward Milwaukee to get showers and thunderstorms, even some snow still hanging out into the northern portion of Michigan. And that's with a warm front that's moving through. So the nice weather from today, as southwesterly winds pick up, yep, we're going to start really getting into this wall of warmth. How about these 80s from St. Louis down to Memphis, Atlanta? Here in Baltimore in the transition zone at about 73, but take a look what happens overnight into early tomorrow. Still kind of a cool night, not as cold as what we woke up to this morning, but by tomorrow afternoon, you're going to start feeling those differences. There are those 80s starting to work in as you get just a few steps away from the cooler Inner Harbor, and I think we're going to be touching probably close to 90 as we head here into Friday. 85 on Thursday. We have new record highs posted on Friday. The record is actually 88 from back in 1957 for Friday, so there's a potential there. That could be a record-shattering high with that high forecast at 89. Some afternoon, evening showers on Saturday could threaten the O's game there. Should be out of the way, I'm hoping, by Sunday afternoon as the O's play again as we drop down to only 68. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, look at that, high 65 to 70. More gorgeous weather right near average, pulling back in.
Well, a celebration underway as we get ready to mark Earth Day this weekend. We were at the Howard County Conservancy today as the community came together to learn about our Earth and our climate. Students from around the state with the Youth Climate Institute got some lessons on climate change, and they learned how to help fight it.
Young people can also take action on so many things. You know, when I was younger, I thought that we weren't able to do much to stop climate change, but through this program, I've learned that there are many ways that we can do so.
County Executive Calvin Ball also joined the group to plant trees. 4 people killed, dozens more shot, the latest on arrests made in the Alabama mass shooting over the weekend. A transgender woman says she was assaulted, abused, and ridiculed, looking into her lawsuit against state correctional facilities. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. throwing his hat in the ring for president. A look at his new campaign message at its official launch. A judge delays a detention hearing for the Air National Guardsman accused of leaking classified information on social media. The suspect, Jake Teixeira, appearing briefly in court, waiving his right to a preliminary hearing. Now, the delay comes at the request of both the prosecution and the defense. They say defense attorneys need more time to prepare. Prosecutors are expected to argue Teixeira should remain behind bars
After more than a year of rollback recycling services, Mayor Brandon Scott is promising to get things back on track, but that promise won't be fulfilled anytime soon.
That's right. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor has more on the mayor's extended deadline, plus why residents and some city officials are pushing back on it. Rebecca?
Yeah, during Monday night's State of the City address, Mayor Brandon Scott said that the city would finally be returning to weekly recycling, but the catch is not until next year. This is despite residents demanding that change be made now.
As piles of plastic and cardboard boxes continue overflowing on curbs across the city, after a year of rolled back services, Mayor Brandon Scott now promising to restore weekly recycling.
Baltimore, you have my word.
But his time frame for doing so?
That we will return to weekly recycling by Q1 of 2024.
Potentially another full year away. Among the city residents calling the mayor's extended deadline crushing.
Recycling should be on track today.
Desmond Stinney, the man behind the lawsuit, demanding the city follow its own charter, which requires weekly recycling collections.
If we're not going to get the services that we're paying for, then perhaps we should, think about holding our property taxes, until 2025 and take a couple of years off from paying those.
To push the can further down the road is not what the citizens were looking to hear.
Councilman Yitzi Schleifer agrees, saying instead of prioritizing basic city services, city funding is being misplaced. Earlier this year, the mayor's Clean Court program paying $15 million for community groups to pick up trash. And in the proposed budget for next year, DPW requesting a nearly 40% increase for upper-level management, some of whom already bring home six-figure salaries, while the overall waste removal and recycling budget only requesting a 7% increase.
Instead of seeing the DPW executives' salaries ballooning, what I'd like to see is that same 40% increase go to the workers at DPW, the ones who are actually doing the work.
Yitzi arguing the mayor's $10,000 recruitment and retention bonuses isn't enough to encourage overworked and underpaid city employees, just like the mayor's 2024 deadline isn't enough to satisfy frustrated city residents.
The excuses certainly have not made sense for a very long time.
They're tone deaf as to what the citizens want and deserve.
And as for Stinney's lawsuit, he says earlier this week the city filed a motion to dismiss the case. Now the next step is for a hearing to be set so that both sides can argue their positions in front of a judge. Stinney says one should likely be scheduled within the next couple of weeks. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca, thank you. As DPW issues continue, some homeowners in Fells Point are frustrated with the construction of new gas lines that they fear is putting them at risk. BGE started replacing the lines in the historic community months ago and really all across Baltimore. Now neighbors are complaining about the danger of new gas regulators being installed outside of their homes. Residents say the new regulators consume valuable sidewalk space on narrow streets and fear they could pose a safety hazard.
Vehicular traffic, scooter traffic, pedestrian traffic. Let's be real. Things can get vandalized and they can get hit. We are somewhat dumbfounded at the lack of equity and sharing of true, real information and possible solutions. Look, we understand and we're appreciative of an upgrade of our system. What we don't want is to be bullied into one solution that is exclusively being put on the table because it's a BG&E internal policy, which is what we've been told.
The Fells Point Residents Association is fighting to relocate these gas regulators.
Jalen has gotten caught up with the wrong people out there older than him, doing things that they made him do. And once you in, you can't get out situation. That's why Jalen's on that box.
Family members of Jalen Richards, the 12-year-old who was shot and killed this past weekend, are speaking out on the youth crime crisis in Baltimore. His grandmother tells Fox 45 News leading up to his death, he was recruited by a gang, was helping older members of the group steal cars, and that he was already on house arrest at 12 for those actions when he was shot and killed. Well, this morning, Fox 45's Megan Gillen spoke with lifelong Baltimore resident Pastor P.M. Smith about the crisis and whose responsibility it is to fix it.
In his State of the City address this week, Mayor Brandon Scott detailing his plans to help curb juvenile crime in the city. But does the responsibility extend further than his office? Lifelong Baltimore resident Pastor P.M. Smith believes the solution starts at home.
It all starts in the family. Children learn respect in the family. Children learn authority in the family. Children learn boundaries in the family. We talk about accountability, but accountability has two C's. Number one, a choice for which there are consequences. And too often, the legislature, and I'm going to say it again, Annapolis undermines the authority of the parent in the life of that child. Just remember during the Freddie Gray riots, this mother saw her son about to do something stupid. She found him, smacked him, and took him home.
For those kids that do not have that family support at home, what is the message that we as the community need to be sending to the young people?
There needs to be a monogamous message. One message. Number one, get your education. Number two, you got to work hard. Number three, avoid poor moral decisions. It's got to be reinforced by the village.
You can hear this entire interview on foxbaltimore.com. I'm Megan Gillen, Fox 45 News.
We'll be focused on crime. That's what the citizens of this county want.
Well, Baltimore County's new police chief says he is tackling crime, and that will be his #1 priority under his leadership. Fox 45's Amy Simpson spoke one-on-one with the chief after he was sworn in yesterday afternoon. She's live now with more on his priorities. Amy?
Yeah, Mary, well, just to name a few, the new chief says he'll be focusing on community policing, safety in both schools and places of worship, and recruiting and retaining officers. But when it comes to crime, Baltimore County shares a border with Baltimore City, which means a regional approach may be needed to tackle crime issues. I asked Chief Robert McCullough what he's doing to keep the lines of communication open with Baltimore City Police Commissioner Michael Harrison. Take a listen.
I talked to Commissioner Harrison yesterday, and we've always had a great relationship. When I was the chief of criminal investigations, we've worked together, and we'll continue to work together. And we're all in this together. We're one team, and we're going to focus on crime together.
And Amy, last spring, the Baltimore County Police Union held a no-confidence vote for its former police chief, Melissa Hyatt. What does the new chief have to say about morale within the department?
Yeah, well, you may remember, Mary, after a months-long search for a new permanent police chief in Baltimore County, ultimately the county executive chose a local candidate. And when I spoke to the chief yesterday afternoon, I asked him about morale in the department, and he said that he's going to pull and draw on his 35 years of experience and relationship with Baltimore County Police Department officers to engage with the current officers at this time. Reporting live tonight, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
A transgender woman is suing the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Facilities, saying that her rights were violated while in their custody. According to that lawsuit, Chelsea Gilliam was arrested for an assault and held at 2 correctional facilities for 6 months. Her attorney says neither facility accepted her legally changed name, or gender identity. They also claim during her time in custody, she was placed in a dormitory with all men, faced daily harassment from inmates and officers because she was forced into solitary confinement for months despite not breaking any rules, and was sexually assaulted by another inmate.
I would say that I was treated like an animal, but it was worse than that. People love and respect their animals. I was treated like an alien from the moment that I entered Baltimore City Corrections.
Well, the lawsuit also alleges Gilliam was denied her hormone treatment while in custody. Her lawyers claim the way she was treated by corrections system should be viewed as cruel and unusual under the 14th Amendment.
A key groundbreaking today as part of a bigger effort to expand affordable housing in Baltimore. The project is starting on Edmondson Avenue in West Baltimore. $53 million being used to build 150 new apartments and improve infrastructure in the area. The facility will also include a playground and community spaces. The redevelopment plans that broke ground today, just one part of a larger $200 million plan to build more affordable apartments in West Baltimore.
There's new information on the mass shooting this weekend in Alabama. Authorities have arrested and charged 2 teenagers in connection with the attack on a Sweet 16 birthday party. 4 people were killed in Saturday's rampage. Dozens of others were hurt, including at least 15 teens. Officials say they are charging both suspects as adults.
This is Alabama. And when you pull out a gun and you start shooting people, we're going to put you in jail. Okay? We're going to do that because we're thinking about the families. We're concerned about the families. We're tired of going to the mothers and having to tell them that these kids are not coming home.
Alabama's district attorney says more charges are on the way. It's still unclear at this time what led to the shooting.
The family of Tyree Nichols is suing over his beating death at the hands of Memphis police officers in January. The lawsuit filed today alleges wrongful death. It names the city of Memphis, its police department, the officers involved, and others. Nichols' mother is listed as the plaintiff. Video of the incident shows 5 police officers in the Memphis Scorpion unit kicking and punching Nichols on January 7th. Nichols died in the hospital 3 days later. The officers involved now face criminal charges, and their unit has been disbanded. The Justice Department is investigating the Memphis Police Department as well.
Is leasing or buying your next car the best option for you? Well, we'll take a closer look at the rapidly changing auto market.
COVID origins. We're speaking to experts and breaking down 2 theories outlined in a just released Senate report.
And, well, I got my lawn done this morning before work. How about you? Maybe this afternoon, this evening? Well, it looks good for it. Take your allergy medicine, though. Boy, those allergens are high. 74 at 5, 71 at 6, and 70 at 7. Lots of sunshine. It's going to get hot around here. I'll let you know when we could threaten 90. It's in my Weather Authority forecast.
It's been 3 years since COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, and there are still fierce debates over how it all started. National correspondent Dee Dee Gatton looks into a new report from Senate Republicans, which examines 2 possible explanations.
The Senate report discusses two theories. While it says there is stronger reason to believe in the second theory, that COVID infected humans is the result of a research-related incident in China, some experts in the scientific community disagree.
According to this more than 300-page report from Senate Republicans, there are two plausible hypotheses for the origins of COVID. That includes a theory outlined in the report claiming the virus infected humans as the result of a research-related incident in a Wuhan lab that was likely unintentional and resulting from poor biosafety containment during vaccine-related research.
A lab leak is the only explanation credibly supported by our intelligence, by science, and by common sense.
I think that 95% of that evidence is on the lab origin.
Some researchers disagree, including Dr. Michael Warby, professor and head of the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology at the University of Arizona.
Those earliest hospitalized people, we know where they lived, and they didn't live around a laboratory that was 10 miles away.
Warby points out there is overwhelming evidence of the first theory stated in the report, that the virus is a result of a natural animal spillover.
The reason that the central scientific studies that are discussed in this Senate report are from my group is that I've looked at the evidence very intensely, and it turns out brick by brick, the evidence forms a solid wall that says it came from wild animals at this market.
Further, Associate Professor of Biology at Penn State University, Dr. Maciek Boni, zeroes in on hundreds of early cases he says can be mapped to December 2019.
And as you walk back in time, the geographic area of those cases gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it narrows down to the Huanan seafood market. The challenge with the laboratory leak theory is that the evidence, either high quality or low quality, just isn't there. What you would need is a laboratory audit or a set of incident reports or inventory of some sample types that are related to COVID-19 as it emerged.
The report does not come to a conclusion on the origin, but points to circumstantial evidence. Reporting for the National Desk, I'm Dee Dee Gatton.
The Biden administration wants to continue to offer COVID-19 vaccines and treatments to the uninsured at no cost. The $1.1 billion plan will continue after the federal supply is exhausted. White House officials say it would run through 2024, but it's not clear how many pharmacies will participate, as they will be expected to conduct their own outreach to underserved populations.
We are looking fantastic this afternoon. Still that elevated fire danger that could actually even last until tomorrow. Right now it's 73, winds out of the northwest at 9, humidity at 19%. So it is dry out. And look at that beautiful April sunshine on the Mile 1 Taos cam. So sunglasses out as that April sunshine and a little bit of a breeze still with winds at about 10, gusting up to 20, along with some of the dry fuels. In other words, the dry grass and the dry foliage and the dry leaves that may be kind of left over from what we saw during the winter into the early spring, plus a low humidity at 17% that could lead to combustion pretty quick if you put out potentially a wildfire or put out, say, open burning. It can turn into a wildfire very quickly and spread very rapidly if you're burning some of that rubbish or some of the debris in your yard left over. So keep that in mind. Humidity levels will be coming up, though, over the next couple of days. And unfortunately, too, so will temperatures. If you like summertime, it's going to be the perfect forecast for you as we head toward Thursday and Friday. Right now, temperature at 73 here in Baltimore, at 71 at Cockeysville. We've got a 69 down at Annapolis, 72 at Columbia, 60s at Elkton. HD radar, very, very quiet until you get up here towards Chicago, Minneapolis. Rain and thunderstorms, even some tornado watches, severe thunderstorm watches that are posted for portions of Iowa. This is with a warm front that's shoving its way northbound into places that had blizzard conditions yesterday and the day before. Now the nicer weather is even trying to push towards those folks as well. Around here, still very pleasant, but that warmer weather, it's coming. And it looks like it's going to be getting here for tomorrow. Look at this wall of warmth down to our south with temperatures well into the 80s. So it's kind of almost pool weather. Places like Atlanta all the way back down into the central and mid-south. So future stand overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. Not quite as chilly As we drop down, still, I mean, it's going to be crisp numbers. You may need a jacket here by tomorrow morning at 6:15, 48 at Westminster, 50s in Baltimore. And then a quick recovery tomorrow afternoon through the 70s. And it looks like if you get a few steps away from the water, we're easily into the 80s, about 80 to 85 or so. Some of the warmer spots may be even a little bit warmer than that. And then we could touch near 90 on Friday. That would set a new record with that 89. The record for the date is 88 from back in 1957. Then some showers could arrive by later on Saturday, especially Saturday evening, Saturday night into Sunday morning. Could clear out by Sunday afternoon. Again, the O's are in town this weekend, including Friday. Friday's a good day for the game. Saturday, Sunday may be a little touch and go here. And then as we head into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, high temperatures about 65 to 70, which is exactly where we should be for this time of year.
Jonathan, thank you. Put the power of the Weather Authority Storm Center in your hands. Download the free WBFF Weather Authority app for your smartphone. Use our powerful Doppler radar to follow storms to your street. Go to your app store and search WBFF to get started.
I'm Angela Brown in Washington, D.C. As more states line up to ban gender-affirming care, some conservative groups have a new target in gender treatment. What it is, next.
Should you lease or buy your next car? Coming up, researching the pros and cons. You know, when it's time to buy a new car, the choice between buying or leasing a vehicle can be a tough one to make. Patrice Sanders shows us Consumer Reports has some tips for deciding which option will get you in the driver's seat with the best deal.
Oscar Pagan says buying a car this past January was a no-brainer. the option to own is always better, in my opinion, than to lease, because at least you have an asset, and if anything ever happens, you can sell that asset.
But deciding whether to buy or lease your next car can be a tough decision. And with today's higher car prices, the average price paid for a new car is nearly $50,000, and highest interest rates above 6%. You're likely looking at bigger monthly payments no matter which you choose. Consumer Reports says on the surface, leasing can be more appealing than buying.
First, it's always under warranty. Second, you're always driving a car with the latest safety features. And third, if you're working part-time in the office and part-time at home, you're not driving as much. So that means you probably won't exceed the lease's limits on how many miles you can drive.
Monthly payments are usually lower with the lease because you're not paying for the full value of the car. That means you may be able to drive a more expensive vehicle than you'd normally be able to afford. While that might sound appealing, there's one hard fact about leasing. At the end of the term, you'll have to return the car because you don't own it.
A major downside of leasing is that you have an endless cycle of paying for a car. You're never without a car payment, because as soon as the one lease is up, you have to either buy a car or get into another lease.
It's difficult to make a fair head-to-head comparison, but in general, 2 back-to-back 3-year leases will always cost more compared with buying and owning a car over that same period, because the buyer owns the asset, the vehicle, after that period. If you do choose to buy your next car, CR says there are some easy ways to save. Don't rely on the dealer for the best loan rate. Instead, check if your bank or local credit unions offer lower rates. And if your heart isn't set on a specific make or model, shop around for financing incentives that might be offered by manufacturers. Even if you choose to lease, you should still negotiate the price of the car and the terms of the deal. Patrice Sanders, Fox 45 News.
All right, taking a look into the weekend forecast. O's are back in town. I know that's the battle of the beltways, and they're still pretty close today. But take a look for Friday. They're actually going to be at Camden Yards, and it looks like pretty nice. It's going to be very warm. And then some showers arrive for the Saturday evening game. That one could be in jeopardy. Then by Sunday, it looks like they're out of here. That's an afternoon game, so I think we should be a lot better for the second half of the weekend. But, boy, is it going to be cooler. 80 on Saturday, dropping to 68 by Sunday afternoon.
All right, Jonathan, thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5, the Department of Corrections is responding after a transgender inmate has accused them of cruel treatment. And Fox 45 News speaks with the mother of a 12-year-old boy killed this weekend in South Baltimore, the struggles that we're now hearing about.
The future of abortion access in front of the nation's highest court. The decision leaving the abortion pill on store shelves for now.
It's budget season, and in Harford County, a battle is unfolding over how many tax dollars should go towards education. We break down the debate.
But first, relatives of a 12-year-old killed this weekend in South Baltimore are speaking to FOX45 News. Why they say young people in the city are facing an uphill battle to stay away from crime.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
And tonight, Fox 45 News has relentless coverage of the crime crisis facing Baltimore. You are looking at some of the young lives that have been lost this year already. 9 children under the age of 18 murdered.
Tonight, you'll hear from the accounts from heartbroken families and communities as we dig into what's leading the violence that's facing them.
They still was dragging my baby to the streets because he was a minor.
I had a son, and he is gone. My son was the statistic this time. I'm not going to be okay with this. Like, I'm not letting people forget his name.
I feel like they're prey to these predators, these drug dealers that are hanging out around the schools.
And guess how many more out here are going to be like Jalen?
Thank you for joining us at 5 o'clock. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. We have live team coverage of the crime crisis. Maxine Stryker putting a face to this violence.
First, Mackenzie Frost continues our team coverage of the murder of a 12-year-old this weekend in South Baltimore. Mackenzie, you spoke with the teen's mother today and aunt.
Yeah, that's right. We spoke with Jalen Richards' family, and these two sisters say that they were working with Jalen so that he could stay away from the wrong crowd, noting that he was involved in some previous criminal activity. Now, the two sisters didn't want to show their faces on camera because they were afraid of retaliation, but their story is raising some serious questions for leaders, and we're pressing them for answers. The sounds of grief.
My son's life ran out, like I said, to the streets of Baltimore City.
From a mother whose 12-year-old son was gunned down in South Baltimore, and an aunt who wants to share more about Jalen Richards. Richards was on house arrest, the family says, for theft charges, and they say it's all because the child was hanging out with an older crowd.
Big people that don't want to take charges and say you're a 12-year-old that you will come home. They still was dragging my baby to the streets because he was a minor.
These feelings echoed by Richards' grandmother.
Carjacking. They had him carjacking. These older children, Jalen don't know how to drive. He was just hanging along for the ride. And them older people had already got a catch on him.
It's not just the family of Jalen's Richards. Patty Hawkins moved her son out of Baltimore because she says he was facing pressures from adults in the city.
It's easier to have children sell drugs for you than you to get a charge yourself to sell drugs. For me to know that my son was struggling with keeping himself out of a gang and didn't know how to communicate with me, that really hurt.
After a law passed during the 2022 General Assembly session, kids 13 and under shielded from facing charges. Now, families say their kids are being recruited by adults to commit crimes. So we sent questions to Mayor Brandon Scott's office asking, is there a trend of adults using children to commit their crimes in the city? If so, should lawmakers at the state level revisit laws shielding some of these kids from charges? What's your message to these families? Mayor Brandon Scott ignoring the questions. We also sent a few to Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison asking, does Baltimore City have a gang problem? If so, what do you say to Baltimoreans who are concerned about this growing gang activity? Again, no answers. While leaders stay silent about possible policy changes, families are grieving.
The parents is planning funerals for their kids, not planning birthday parties.
And demanding police go after the people getting kids involved in this life of crime.
These older kids out here that he was dealing with got my grandson killed. They took advantage of him.
Before the streets of Baltimore claim another young life.
The street swallowed my grandson. Grown folks took advantage of my grandson, and he's gone.
On Tuesday, we asked lawmakers in Annapolis what policies can be changed to address this growing problem. But again, not one elected leader responded. Live in the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Well, young people have been hit especially hard by violence in Baltimore City this year. Their loved ones left grieving and wondering about their unfulfilled potential. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live right now with their stories. Maxine.
Kai, there's certainly a lot of heartbreak in Baltimore City from families who have lost their children to gun violence. Their stories, their cries for change, all hauntingly similar and not to be forgotten.
They say no parent should outlive their child. But in Baltimore City, it's the harsh reality for far too many families.
My grandson was killed like a dog in the street.
This year alone, 9 children under the age of 18 have been killed. Victims of violence, their lives were cut shockingly short. This is 17-year-old Deja Garrison, shot and killed on New Year's Day. 2 days later, 8-year-old elementary school student Dylan King was killed. His older brother accused of the crime.
Sad for the family. I feel for the family.
The following day, 16-year-old Deontay Dorsey was gunned down outside the Edmondson Village Shopping Center, where 4 other students were also hurt. His family vowing to keep his name alive.
We're very heartbroken, and we're trying to get through this the best way that we can.
15-year-old LaRon Henderson's family also left grieving after he was killed in an alley blocks from his high school.
We need to stop glorifying this, and we need to stop normalizing this. This is not normal. Not at one piece, this is normal.
Another student, Andres Moreno Jr., just 16 years old, was also killed in January.
And you can tell that he wasn't breathing after that. He was walking home. He was a nice boy. He didn't bother nobody. He didn't say nothing to nobody. I don't understand what happened, really.
That's 4 young victims who will never graduate high school or go on to fulfill their dreams, all killed before the month's end. On March 6th, 16-year-old Isaiah Carter, a Patterson High JROTC student, was killed in a park near his high school. His mother left with the pain that will last a lifetime.
I had a son, and he is gone. My son was the statistic this time. I'm not going to be okay with this. Like, I'm not letting people forget his name.
On April 10th, 16-year-old Cameron Murphy was shot and killed near Mondawmin Avenue. And Saturday night, the latest young victim, 12-year-old Jalen Richards, was shot. Assault rifle casings were found on the ground after police say he was struck several times while running away.
I would never, ever be able to touch him again and tell him how much I love him. And it's heartbreaking.
That heartbreak is felt in homes across Baltimore City with empty beds where these children once slept.
Now, a 2-year-old little girl's death was also ruled a homicide this year due to fentanyl intoxication. Reporting live in Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. And here are some of the stats. So far this year, 83 people have been murdered in Baltimore. That is down by 18 this point last year. 163 people have survived shootings. Now, Mayor Scott campaigned on reducing homicides by 15% each year that he was in office. And 2 years into office, that hasn't happened. During his State of the City address on Monday, Mayor Scott doubled down on his crime-fighting strategy. And in response to a rise in juvenile crime, the mayor says a curfew will be introduced this summer for young people in Baltimore.
We have to address violence at every level. But for far too long, the argument has been that we either arrest our way out of it and drive mass incarceration or drive investment into our communities. Baltimoreans elected me because we were approaching public safety in a way that was not producing results.
The Baltimore police is asking for the public's help in a homicide investigation. The department released new video showing a person shooting and killing a man. It happened Sunday on Chesley Avenue in Northeast Baltimore. The suspect wore a hoodie and was in all black. Police say he chased the victim behind a home and shot him multiple times. There's an $8,000 reward for information leading to an arrest in the case. Anyone with information should call police.
Tonight, some new details in an ongoing Project Baltimore investigation.
As we told you earlier this week, the Maryland Department of Education removed state test results from its website and hid the data from the public.
As Project Baltimore Chris Papps explains, after 2022, the state wasn't done making changes.
2019 was the last full year of state testing in Maryland. Back then, Project Baltimore downloaded the results off of MSDE's website. But now, those results look a lot different. The first thing we noticed, the entire column called Proficient Count is no longer there. In 2019, when the state first posted the data, we could see the number of students proficient in every school. If less than 5% or more than 95% were proficient, it was marked with an asterisk. The state says to protect student privacy. But now, the entire column is gone. Lucy Dalglish, the dean of the journalism school at the University of Maryland, argues that what MSD is doing hurts many people across the state.
And I think the public deserves to hear from public officials as to why all of a sudden this is being done. And if it's such a really brilliant thing to do, they should be there eager and willing to talk to you and explain to the public why they're doing it and what the public benefit to this approach is.
But MSDE is not stopping in 2019. Coming up tonight on Fox 45 News at 10, we'll tell you what the state says it plans to do with older state testing data that is currently available on its website. I'm Chris Papst, and this is Project Baltimore.
The fight over abortion access returns to the U.S. Supreme Court. The ruling today setting up another battle on Friday.
A transgender woman is suing the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Facilities. What she's alleging.
And next, the back and forth over education funding in Harford County. Why the county executive and superintendent are in conflict.
And we could be threatening some record warmth as we head towards the end of the week before showers roll in for Saturday. I'm going to let you know what comes after that, and if it's a total washout for your weekend, it's up in my Weather Authority forecast.
I know it's not going to make everybody happy. When you do a fiscally responsible budget, there's always going to be folks who aren't too happy.
This county is failing to fund education at the level that it needs to.
It is budget season, and education funding for Harford County Public Schools has the county executive and the school superintendent at odds.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson is live. Amy, what are the county executive and school superintendent disagreeing over?
Yeah, so this is all about those tax dollars being earmarked for public schools in Harford County in the coming year. And both the county executive and the superintendent have come on our air this week to share their side of the debate. Harford County Executive Bob Cassilly outlining his new budget proposal on Fox 45 Monday morning.
So we really had to take a very conservative and fiscally responsible approach.
A proposal with no tax increases. Cassilly talking about the roughly $305 million he's allocating to Harford County Public Schools, less than the $324 million provided last year by the previous administration.
We've more than fully funded the state, our educational budget over the last several years, and that's enabled our Board of Education to accumulate a fund balance of over $93 million. And there's way too much money going into the central office where most folks are still working remotely, and not into the classroom where teachers are working every day.
But that interview prompting a strong response from District Superintendent Dr. Sean Bolson, who says only 25 central office staff work remotely, and the district shouldn't use its cash reserves for recurring expenses.
We requested $19 million above last year's funding. He's chosen to fund us at $19.5 million below what we received last year.
In a statement, the Harford County School Superintendent calls this budget proposal a worst-case scenario for the district, says Cassilly doesn't care about the kids of Harford County and is using them as political pawns.
We haven't seen funding go down year over year in the recorded history of Harford County.
If more funding doesn't come through, Bolson warns of larger class sizes and uncompetitive teacher salaries, adding that inflation has hit every part of the district's budget.
The costs are increasing greatly, but this county is failing to fund education at the level that it needs to.
The county executive acknowledging the tough economic times, saying in part, our choices are to either live within our means or raise taxes. I have opted to live within our means. And sharing this graph, which shows Harford County Schools can fully meet its request for the next fiscal year if the difference in funding comes from the state, the feds, and other sources of money. Now, the Harford County Council will still need to consider and eventually approve a final budget for the entire Harford County government, including this portion for schools. There's work sessions and public hearings set for next month for the public to weigh in. Reporting live tonight, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Well, let's take a live look outside now as we get a first check of the forecast. You are looking live at the Osprey Cam at Smallwood State Park in Charles County. The DNR says they're keeping an eye on 3 eggs that perhaps mama or daddy is sitting on right now.
Beautiful.
Nesting.
Very nice.
Yes, that's beautiful. So
Osprey
cool.
doesn't mind that we're imposing on
They're
its
okay.
presence there.
They're okay.
They look all right. They're enjoying that sunshine, though, I'll tell you. It's just a beautiful day today. Temperatures in the 70s. And it looks like, unfortunately, just like yesterday, we continue with maybe not the critical fire danger that we had yesterday that prompted the red flag warning, but still elevated fire danger for the remainder of today. As right now we're at 74, very low humidity, lots of sunshine. It's still a little bit of a breeze. Not quite as cold overnight tonight into early tomorrow, as low temperatures probably going to be in the 40s or 50 instead of like yesterday into this morning where we hit 37. I checked some of those readings. Boy, it was cold. And then for tomorrow, heats up. Look at that high temperature at 85, and it's going to go even warmer than that. Potentially by Friday, we could be 89, 90 degrees easy. 74 degrees with sun right now. Winds still, yeah, they're a little frisky at northwest at 13. Good open window weather for that trip home, though. Humidity is bone dry at 17%. So this is why we have that issue with, again, still some of those breezes about 10 to 15 with gusts to about 20. And then we tack on some of the dry ground fuel. In other words, any of the leftover leaves or potentially even grass clippings, foliage that's on the ground. It's real dried out. And then we have relative humidity at only 14%. That leads to explosive potential fire development if you have any open burning going on. So do not do that this afternoon, and I'd refrain from that tomorrow as well. Temperatures are in the 70s, 60s near the water. Just absolutely wonderful day. Next weather maker, here it is, out to the west, providing for rain and thunderstorms, even tornado watch over portions of Nebraska as you work your way all the way into Iowa. You can see the warm fronts moving northbound, so that means the nice weather today gives way to a wall of warmth for tomorrow as well as Friday. Finally, the cold front with this, it's lodged, well, you can see all the cold air behind it over the Intermountain West. Well, that's going to move in here. It's going to be in a much weakened state by the time we get into the weekend. So future scan says overnight we forecast temperatures dropping down again into the 40s to near 50 instead of like those 30s to near 40 we had yesterday into early today. And then 8 a.m. we're starting to work those temperatures up, and there we go into the mid 80s potentially tomorrow afternoon. Right near the water, maybe a couple of degrees cooler in the upper 70s and low 80s. 85 for tomorrow. How about 89 on Friday? 88's a record, so that'd be a new record high. And then some afternoon and evening shower Saturday could threaten the O's game there. They should be out, I'm thinking, by Sunday afternoon as that 1:35 start time kicks up there against the Tigers. 68 and 65, 70 in dry skies into early next week.
Jonathan, thank you. 2 teenagers arrested in a mass shooting in Alabama that left 4 people dead and dozens of injured.
How in the world did a 21-year-old National Guardsman have access to this level of top secret information?
Assessing the damage straight ahead, the hearing on Capitol Hill today after a 21-year-old is accused of leaking national defense information online.
If someone shows up at your house unexpectedly, do you have the right to shoot them? That's what happened to 2 young people recently. I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington with a look at what rights homeowners have.
Making headlines tonight, two recent shootings of people who mistakenly went to the wrong address have reignited the conversation surrounding stand your ground laws. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has a look at what rights a homeowner has when somebody unexpectedly comes onto your property.
In a 2-day span, two young people were shot after approaching the wrong houses.
Going up the wrong driveway by mistake is certainly not grounds in New York anyways to be shot at.
In New York, 20-year-old Kaylin Gill is shot and killed after pulling into the wrong driveway. 65-year-old Kevin Monahan now charged with her murder. In Missouri, 16-year-old Ralph Yarl is recovering from 2 gunshot wounds after knocking on the wrong door when picking up his little brothers from a playdate. 84-year-old Andrew Lester was charged with first-degree assault and faces life in prison.
It is one of the most astonishing, shameful stories that I think I've heard about in some time.
Both cases raising the question, what rights do homeowners have to shoot someone on their property? At least 30 states have some version of stand your ground laws where someone has no duty to retreat when met with a threat. Missouri is one of them. We spoke with former federal prosecutor Thiru Viknaraja. Could the shooter in Missouri use stand your ground in his defense?
Look, it's going to be very difficult. In no state in the country has stand your ground doctrine been interpreted to say you can use lethal force even when you don't have a reasonable fear of imminent physical harm. Otherwise, you could shoot a Girl Scout.
New York doesn't have a stand your ground law, and Viknaraja says a similar law there won't help Gillis's alleged shooter. The mayor of Kansas City, meanwhile, says race was the key factor in the shooting of Ralph Yarl.
This defendant, in the probable cause statement, is indicated to have said he was afraid of Ralph because he is a tall black man.
Critics argue the racial component caused Yarl's case to receive significantly more coverage, despite similarities to Gillis's. As of Wednesday, Google showing 124,000 results for Yarl and just under 13,000 for Gillis. President Biden has called the Yarl family. No reports of him calling the Gillises. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
The FDA has signed off on a new COVID booster. Who qualifies for it?
Why are more and more violent crimes being committed by young people? I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington with a look at the disturbing trend.
Baltimore residents could go nearly another year without returning to weekly recycling pickup, while Mayor Scott is facing backlash.
Two teenage boys have been arrested in connection with the mass shooting at a Sweet 16 birthday party in Dadeville, Alabama last weekend. 4 people were killed, dozens of others hurt. The teens are 16 and 17, and both are facing murder charges and are being charged as adults.
When I tell you that this is just the tip of the iceberg and forthcoming charges, literally, we're going to make sure every one of those victims has justice and not just the deceased.
Well, 4 victims remain in the hospital in critical condition. That Sweet 16 party tragedy is a snapshot of a disturbing trend unfolding across the country.
That's right. Younger and younger people being dragged into a life of violent crime, especially in places like here in Baltimore, where the punishments against them have been rolled back.
Here's national correspondent Christine Frizzell.
Last week, it was Baltimore's Inner Harbor.
We have 200-300 juveniles all here on scene.
Then, disturbing video from earlier this week in Chicago, as 2 people were brutally beaten and robbed. Chicago's curfews for minors at Millennium Park blamed in part for those minors taking to the streets. Though Chicago Mayor-elect Brandon Johnson in a statement said it's not constructive to demonize youth who have been starved of opportunities in their communities. Not the case in Washington, D.C., where residents are growing frustrated at new laws that go easy on young people.
If you're mad enough to go and just shoot a parking lot up with innocent people, why the hell will we let you out tomorrow? I don't care if you're young or old.
Young people also at the heart of so-called street takeovers in Los Angeles and this looting of an Arco gas station in Compton as law enforcement around the country grows frustrated. Hey, get this in New York City, police said 124 juveniles committed shootings during 2022, up from 48 in 2019. And in Philadelphia last year, 117 juveniles were arrested for shootings, up from 43 in 2019. More juveniles committing violent crimes has meant more juveniles are victims as well.
My grandson was killed like a dog in the street.
The grandmother of 12-year-old Jalen Richards speaking honestly about the situation he was already in, wearing an ankle bracelet on house arrest the night that he was killed.
He was doing things that a child his age shouldn't.
Like what?
Carjacking. They had him carjacking. These older children, Jalen don't know how to drive. He was just hanging along for the ride.
That mounting pressure on our young people, increasing for policymakers as well, to solve these problems before they get even worse. In Washington, I'm Christine Frizzell.
Well, we'd like you to join the conversation. Do you think there should be stiffer penalties for kids who commit crimes? Yes or no? You can vote by scanning the QR code on your screen. Open up your camera and point it at the QR code.
After more than a year of rollback recycling services, Mayor Brandon Scott is promising to get things back on track, but that promise will not be fulfilled anytime soon.
Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor has more on the mayor's extended deadline, plus why residents and city officials are pushing back. Rebecca.
Yeah, during Monday night's State of the City address, Mayor Brandon Scott said that the city will finally return to weekly recycling. But the catch is not until next year. This as piles of plastic and cardboard boxes continue overflowing on curbs across the city. City residents I spoke with say they're glad the mayor finally has a plan in motion, but they can't wrap their heads around why it's taking so long to restore such a basic city service. I also spoke with Councilman Yitzi Slifer, who agrees the city should have worked this out months ago.
The excuses certainly have not made sense for a very long time, and so they could get these routine collections picked up if it was a priority to do so, but it doesn't seem like it was a priority to do so.
And some residents are so fed up, they've even filed a lawsuit demanding weekly recycling resume immediately. The grassroots group behind the measure says earlier this week the city filed a motion to dismiss the case. The next step is now for a hearing to be set so both sides can argue their cases in front of a judge. I'm told that should likely be scheduled within the next couple of weeks. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca, thank you. As the Department of Public Works issues continue, some homeowners in Fells Point are frustrated with the construction of a new gas line they fear is putting them at risk. Baltimore Gas Electric started replacing a gas line in the historic community months ago. Now neighbors are complaining about the danger of those new regulators being installed outside their houses. Residents say the regulators consume valuable sidewalk space on narrow streets, and they fear could pose a safety hazard if they're hit.
Vehicular traffic, scooter traffic, pedestrian traffic, let's be real, things can get vandalized and they can get hit. We are somewhat dumbfounded at the lack of equity and sharing of true, real information and possible solutions. Look, we understand and we're appreciative of an upgrade of our system. What we don't want is to be bullied into one solution that is exclusively being put on the table because it's a BG&E internal policy, which is what we've been told.
The Fells Point Residents Association is fighting to relocate those regulators.
Making headlines, the U.S. Supreme Court is once again buying more time to rule on abortion pill restrictions. Justice Samuel Alito is extending the stay on the order until just before midnight Friday. The High Court is hearing a case from Texas where abortion opponents want to limit access to the abortion drug mifepristone. The rule change would cut back the time frame women can take the pill from 10 weeks to 7. It would also prohibit mailing the drug, requiring mothers to make 3 in-person visits with a doctor as well. Democrats in Washington today holding a rally on abortion access.
The court faces a clear choice: uphold legal and scientific fact or capitulate to MAGA extremism.
Democrats argue the FDA ruled the drug is safe at 10 weeks of pregnancy and limiting access to it infringes on women's rights. Republicans maintain their stance that states should be able to determine how much access women have to the abortion pill.
The Supreme Court did not do away with abortion. They sent it back to the states where you and I and everybody in every state could vote on whether they wanted abortion or not. And that's the way it should be.
This latest fight comes less than a year after the High Court ruled and reversed Roe versus Wade and allowed states to create their own rules regarding abortion.
A detention hearing has been delayed for the 21-year-old Air National Guardsman accused of leaking national defense information.
This kid is not a hero. He may have been an idiot and immature, but the damage that it appears he's caused is very real.
Jack Teixeira is accused of leaking defense information in a gamer chat room. Prosecutors were set to argue that Teixeira should remain in custody while his criminal case proceeds. The Secretary of the Air Force has directed its Inspector General to investigate the unit where Teixeira worked. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin insists the problem wasn't Teixeira's young age.
The issue is, how you responsibly execute or carry out your duties and how you protect the information.
Well, in D.C. today, senators heard from the Biden administration about the scope of the leak. According to the Washington Post, the files reveal highly sensitive information, including the possibility of China deploying a high-altitude spy drone that travels at least 3 times the speed of sound.
Well, taking a look now at the Fox Quad Box daylight revealing the damage after a 4-story garage collapsed yesterday in New York City. 1 person was killed, 5 others hurt. The cause is not known and the structure will be demolished.
The family of Tyree Nichols is suing over his beating death in January. The lawsuit alleges wrongful death and names the city of Memphis, Tennessee, its police department, the officers involved, and others.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nephew of former President John Kennedy, is running for president. RFK Jr. joins Arthur Marianne Williamson in the primary that President Biden is soon expected to enter as the favorite.
The FDA has authorized another COVID-19 bivalent booster shot. It's for those with compromised immune systems and those over 65 years of age who have not had a bivalent booster shot in at least 4 months.
Be the first to know about breaking news by signing up for News on the Go. Go to foxbaltimore.com, click on Mobile Alert Sign Up under the Station tab.
A transgender woman is suing Maryland State Correctional Facilities, the accusations of gross negligence.
I'm Angela Brown in Washington, D.C. As more states line up to ban gender-affirming care, some conservative groups have a new target in gender treatment. What it is, next.
And if you're going to be headed out to dinner this evening after a gorgeous day, staying pretty nice this evening and not as cold as we started this morning. We got down to 37. We'll be at 72 at 6, 69 at 7 p.m. and into the low 60s by 9 and 10. I'm going to let you know we could have highs in the low 90s around here. That's in my Weather Authority forecast.